If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Payne Points of Wealth podcast with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You could control for partisan effect. There was racially polarized voting even within the Democratic Party. That's where Section 2 matters, where you have a reason to think that a racial group is being treated.
You have some of that here, too. You have proof of that here.
No, you don't. What you have here is that Republicans and Democrats are different. No,
you have some that even white Republicans or white Democrats won't vote for black candidates.
Right, but if these were white Democrats, there's no reason to think they would have a second district. None. And so what is happening here is their argument is because these Democrats happen to be black, they get a second district. If they were all white, we all agree they wouldn't get a second district. That is literally the definition of race subordinating traditional principles.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is an excerpt from the hearing today at the Supreme Court of the United States on Louisiana's challenge to the Voting Rights Act, and it appears that Democrats are going to be unhappy. The U.S. Supreme Court conservatives appear willing to blunt key Voting Rights Act provision. That is a Reuters headline from the AP. Well, that's a different story. Excuse me. From the Washington Post, Supreme Court seems open to limiting key section of Voting Rights Act. And there are more. So that's one of the things that we will discuss today, this challenge to the Voting Rights Act. And it is based on race. Race seems to dominate so many of the stories in our lives. The New York Times did, who are the Louisiana voters behind a major Supreme Court challenge? They want to know who are these people that challenge this? They're not mentioned. They're just, they're not mentioned by name, and the New York Times wants to make sure that some of their names are known. Also from the Times, Supreme Court appears poised on Wednesday to upend a key provision of the landmark civil rights law by prohibiting lawmakers from using race as a factor in drawing voting maps, which could, you're looking at me puzzled, Carlos. I'm still being unclear, and I'm glad you are, because a lot of people don't follow this stuff in detail, because it's just not, this is what political junkies follow. So is it clear to you what's going on here? All right. I'm so happy that you do look puzzled and you listen, and when things puzzle you, I can tell. So let me try to explain all this in ways that could make sense. Back in the old days in America, when the Democrats ruled the South, the Democrat Party, the party of slavery, ruled with an iron fist in the South. They were a bunch of racist SOBs. They used to do all kinds of things to keep black people from voting. They used to put what they called a poll tax. So in other words, poor black families would then go to the polls to try to vote, black men and women, and they were told, no, you have to pay a tax in order to vote. They used to put all kind of roadblocks in the way. These Democrats, the Democrat Party, the Southern Democrat Party, and there were many of them, they used to own the South. Like all these southern states, like Mississippi, Louisiana, where this case is from, Alabama. Alabama's where Democrat George Wallace once stood in the schoolhouse, DOA, to try to keep young black children from going to school. And he said at the time, segregation, segregation forever. And black Democrats, they were in Florida. They ruled Florida. They ruled North Carolina, South Carolina, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, Lester Maddox down there in Georgia. So back in the day when Democrats, and by the way, this was while they were still marching around talking about what lovely people they were, Kennedy and all that, and the Kennedys and all that. It was a Republican by the name of Dwight D. Eisenhower, who used to be the big figure in World War II, help us win that war. He became president after Harry Truman. He became president. He and old Tricky Dick Nixon was his vice president. And Democrats wouldn't let black children go to school with white kids. So Republican Dwight D. Eisenhower pulled a Trump move. Before Trump, he sent the National Guard over the objections of Arkansas Democrat governor. He sent the National Guard in there to protect black children trying to go to school. But while all this was late 1950s, while all this was going on, the Democrats still didn't want black people to vote. So then, President John Kennedy from Massachusetts, he was one of them upstart Democrats from the North. And them Southern Democrats don't like the Northern Democrats. They're Yankees. They didn't like old Kennedy. But Kennedy went down in the South in Texas, and that's when he was killed, murdered, assassinated. After that, the nation was, 1963 was that year. So Kennedy was assassinated. The nation was grieving. Lyndon Baines Johnson, his vice president, was from Texas. But Lyndon Baines Johnson, said, I'm gonna take up the Kennedy mantle. We're gonna pass some civil rights legislation, dadgummit. We're gonna do it despite these Southern Democrats who hate black people. And that's what they live for, to hate black peoples. So good old boy Lyndon Johnson turned on his fellow Southerner, and they thought he was turning. They were mad at OLBJ. They were mad. You following me so far? Okay, so they were mad at Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson said, well, dadgummit, we're going to pass some civil rights legislation, and we're going to help black people finally be free from those damn racist Democrats. Which that's my party, but we're gonna stop this nonsense. They hated LBJ too for that. So what happened? They came up with two big pieces of civil rights legislation. One of them is called the Voting Rights Act of 1964. And in the Voting Rights Act, they said, y'all Democrats have to stop this stuff. Y'all can't keep denying black people the right to vote. And it was a whole big act. You can go read it. It's a complicated big act. But here's what it did. It said from now on, the federal government got to look at the way y'all do your election laws in you Southern Democrat states that treat black people so wickedly. And they also established that black people down there could actually, have districts where it was majority black districts, and they could use race to determine those districts so that white people, Democrats, couldn't stop keeping black people from being elected to office. And that was in 1964. Now, this is where it gets complicated. Some of the stuff in there, like this whole idea that the federal government could look at elections, they didn't put a date when this would end. They just said, okay, this is what the law is now. Here in 64, we're going to change the way that these Southern Democrats who hate black people, and Democrats been the party of slavery ever since almost the beginning of America, we're going to stop this. So they stopped it. Now, here's the problem. Here's why all this is important now. It's been since 1964. That's a lot of years. It's a lot of decades. Things done changed. Them Southern Democrats ain't in power no more. They do their racism now in the big cities. They don't do it all down. They don't control this whole South no more. Republicans now in charge. Republicans were still held by these rules. Why you got to come to the federal government. You got to do, and meanwhile, all these using race has enabled a lot of seats to be just based on race. And so you got almost a lot of those congressional black Caucasian seats, that's the CBC, well, they call themselves the Congressional Black Caucus. We call them the Congressional Black Caucasians, same difference. Anyway, so their seats were, a lot of them, determined by these racial parameters that were set up. Now, people in Louisiana and other states are now fed up. They're like, okay, look, come on now. These states ain't the same. We done chased these Democrat scoundrels out of office. They're not down here no more suppressing and oppressing black people. And it's not fair that we have to just carve out congressional seats around the idea of race. The government is supposed to be colorblind. Everybody's supposed to have equal justice under the law and equal rights under the law. We don't need this anymore. We don't chase them racist Democrats out of the South. And in a nutshell, that's what they're arguing about today at the Supreme Court. It's time to get rid of all this racial stuff that's holdover from when Democrats was in charge and Democrats was abusing it and being wicked to people. It's time to let it go. And that's what the argument is at the Supreme Court. We don't need those regulations anymore, them rules, 1964 Voting Rights Act. We didn't fix the problem. Them evil Democrats, wicked Democrats been chased out of office, for goodness sake. And so that's what they're arguing about today at the Supreme Court. Does that make sense now?
Sure, but yeah.
But what?
Nothing.
Come on now, if I didn't get, if there's some lack of understanding here, I need to know.
No, but I mean, you said they did it in the beginning in order for representation for specific areas to be more, to represent those areas, right? And why? I mean, why stop it? Because, like, why not, like, expand it?
Why stop it? Because it's against because we're supposed, this is a great question. Why stop it? Because America is not the same anymore. We are not inherently a nation ruled by wicked Democrats' racial preferences anymore. Ain't nobody's trying to stop black people from voting no more. Ain't no segregation no more. Them Democrats been run out of office. So all these remedies, the government is supposed to treat everybody the same. They're not supposed to look at you and say, because you black, we're going to treat you different. Because you white, we're going to treat you different. And so now we're evolving into a nation that lives up to our promise that we will treat every single human being with the respect and dignity that they get from just being an American citizen. We're not going to keep looking and say, oh, what color are you? We got to treat you different. What thing are you? That's not the way it's supposed to be in America. America, we're all supposed to have equal justice under the law. No preferences. Does that make sense?
It does, but I feel like it's going to come up again that, oh, yeah, this person doesn't represent all of us, and then, like back to the vicious cycle coming up.
What person ever has represented all of us? That's the whole point. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. That's life. I started to go all Southern on you, say, that's life, boy. But I ain't going to call you no boy because we ain't getting to that. I ain't no young Republican, which is a whole nother story, whole nother kettle of fish. Anyway, we have to take a break. I hope it makes better sense what the argument is.
It does. I don't get why it's such a huch deal. Like,
I'll tell you why it's a big deal when we get back. It's a big deal. Big. Especially in 2025. I'll explain that. James Golden, it's a beautiful day. We're coming back. Whatever you do, do not go away.
The Rush Hour with James Golden
on the Red Apple Podcast Network. following is a paid political announcement.
Lifelong Democrat Diana Florence served for 25 years as a Manhattan prosecutor under DA Robert Morgenthau. She put criminals away, stood up for victims, and protected our streets. Now, Diana is challenging failed Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg as an independent because it's time for a DA who fights for our families, not criminals. That's why Diana has won the support of organized labor, like the steamfitters, plumbers, and ironworkers, everyday New Yorkers who want a DA they can trust. Manhattan needs a DA who will do the job, prosecute crime. That's Diana Florence. Under Alvin Bragg, crime is up and prosecutions are down. Bragg doesn't prosecute crime. He plays partisan politics. Bragg failed to protect women and failed to protect workers. As a prosecutor, Diana Florence won groundbreaking convictions, fighting against corruption, domestic violence, wage theft, and deadly working conditions. She's always been a partner of unions, community groups, and to cops like us. For Manhattan District Attorney, vote for Diana Florence. Diana4DA.com. Paid for by Diana for Manhattan DA.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, Carlos Folks just said something profound to me, but we decided we're going to wait till after the break because it's a little bit more involved in what he thinks the priorities are for this nation. And I think it's really important that we address that. I just want to kind of close the loop on it. Princess Diana answered your question, Carlos. Why stop it? She said, because it's become totally corrupt, like everything else Democrats control. And then this is the point. It has become a way for Democrats to run the inner city and their racially gerrymandered districts as their plantations. And here's what she means by that. Because this Voting Rights Act set up district by race, it forbid states from changing those lines if that racial component was going to be diluted. That's what you hear Democrats say. Oh, you're trying to dilute black votes, black voting strengths when you change the district. You set it up by race, and that means it's set up forever. That's not the way elections work. Districts change all the time. Based on the population. But those districts, because it was set up by race, nobody could, because if you dare redraw the voting map and it changes the composition of those, no. Now you're destroying you're violating the Voting Rights Act. It is not, and our voting in America, nothing should be based. Laws made that affect everybody on race of one particular race. That's not America. That's not the way this country, that's not even what the civil rights movement was for. The dream of the civil rights movement was that black people would be able to be treated equally in America. Not that any one racial group would have an advantage. Equal treatment under the law. And it has been corrupted. And that's what's being challenged at the Supreme Court today. The impact on Democrats is going to be stunning. More on that when we get back.
The Rush Hour with James Golden
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
James Golden, Snerdley here, fastest hour in American media. All right, we have to do some things. First of all, Justice Thomas spoke up today. Now, let me just explain one more thing, and I'll get to, Carlos, why is this so important? I'm going to get to it in a minute. But let's hear Clarence Thomas making a point today in today's session. By the way, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she's being raked over the coals like she always does for her questions in the court today. Cut 4, Justice Clarence Thomas talking to the Louisiana solicitor in this case.
What role did Robinson play in the development of SB 8?
Previous decision.
Justice Thomas, Robinson is the only reason SB 8 exists. We fought tooth and nail in the Robinson litigation itself in telling the courts that we did not think the Constitution permitted us to draw a second majority black district. As you know, under protest, we drew SB 8 because the threat was that the federal courts were going to do it if we didn't. And that's, I think that's the best way to conceive of why SB 8 exists. We would never pass SB 8 in the first instance without Robinson, Justice Thomas.
What were the findings in Robinson?
The finding by the Middle District in Robinson was that the plaintiffs in this case were likely to show a violation of Section 2, and the likely violation, and I'm using very broad terminology because I do not know what the underlying violation is. I can't articulate that for you, Justice Thomas, because I don't think anybody can. But I think the finding in the district court's mind in that case was that the likelihood of a Section 2 violation meant that a majority black district was required, a second one. And I think that was the bottom line, and when our legislature saw that, we understood the marching order, and that's why you see SB 8 as it exists today.
Just briefly, what were the findings that led to that conclusion?
Well, Your Honor, running through the preconditions and the totality of the circumstances, I think the totality of the circumstances did most of the work for the Middle District in Robinson. Senate Factor 1, the official history of past discrimination, Justice Thomas, we can never outrun the bad era of poll taxes, of grandfather clauses, of literacy tests. I think we're always going to lose across the board on that kind of analysis, and that's what the Middle District in Robinson focused on, is how bad was Louisiana in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and, add all that together, and at the end you have a vote dilution finding that I don't think is clearly articulable in the way that SFFA requires a finding of discrimination to be specified.
Now, all of that legal, to many people, gobbledygook means this, and we just hit it. All that stuff that happened in the past, all those literacy tests, the poll taxes, all this other stuff Democrats put in, is still what's governing the law today, and it's time to stop it. Because the racist Democrats, wicked Democrats have been run out of the South for the most part. And it's no need for these laws that basically set up racial districts. And the court looks at them and says, we need another racial district. That was just what happened in Louisiana. And it's time to stop this stuff. Now, why is it so important? This is going to be a long cut. It's as important because two things are happening at the same time. Two things. One is this fight over redistricting, which this matters with this Voting Rights Act business. As you know, Texas redistricted, then California redistricted, then you had all these blue states saying, we're going to jump on the bandwagon, we're going to do redistricting too. Let's go to Harrington CNN, cut 6, and explaining what happens with redistricting, and at the end to it, he talks specifically about what could happen as a result of this Supreme Court ruling. And that, my friends, will tell you how important this is.
2018, right? Because that's sort of the baseline. That was, of course, the first Trump term. That was where Democrats are sort of keeping pace. You go back to April, look at the generic congressional ballot. What'd you see? You see +3 Democrats in 2025 in April. You see +3 Democrats back in April of 2017. Now jump over to this side of the screen. What happens? Well, the Democrats are no longer keeping pace with the pace that they were setting back in 2017, 2018. You look back in 2017, you saw that the Democrats had leaped up to an 8-point advantage. I remember covering this. I remember a lot of folks, including myself, saying, you know what, Republicans look pretty decent right now in terms of the fact that they had the House, they had the Senate, they had the presidency, but things were likely going to flip. And I was looking for the same signs this year. The bottom line is it hasn't happened, Kate Baldwin. It hasn't happened. Democrats have stayed basically steady. They have fallen off the pace. Democrats were way out ahead back in 2017 on the generic congressional ballot. And now we're basically looking at Democrats ahead. But again, they are so far in back of the pace that they set back there. And so I think what a lot of folks are seeing, folks like myself, are saying, wait a minute, given what we might be seeing in redistricting, is this +3 going to be enough, Kate Baldwin?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. One change from that cycle is also this mid-decade redistricting effort that we've been covering so much. You add that in, and what do you get?
Okay, so we add that, and we take a look at the national picture, but then we, of course, taking a look at the state legislators, right? They are potentially changing things, and there are two things that are going on here. First off, net mid-decade redistricting gains. If both sides max out at this point, there are more Republican gains possible than Democratic gains. Yes, the Democrats might try to counter a Texas and a California, but you go along in the different states, and basically Democrats run out of room where Republicans are able to gain and gain and gain. If both sides max out, we're probably looking at a GOP gain of +7 House seats. That doesn't even take into account the potential gutting of the VRA that is right now going to be in front of the Supreme Court. If you add that in, you could be looking...
Voting Rights Act.
What? Yes, exactly right. The Voting Rights Act. If you add that in, then you could be looking about adding 10, 12, 15, 17 on top of this 7 seats. So I think a lot of folks like myself are looking at this. We're seeing, hey, wait a minute. Those national polls Democrats are not gaining the way that we expected.
Folks, this voting rights thing, the way Democrats have been using the Voters' Rights Act to stack up districts that can't be touched is challenged. And you just heard Harry from CNN just basically say, wait a minute. If the court rules on this, and we've already got this redistricting stuff, Republicans were already set to gain 7 seats. 7 seats. Potentially, if all this redistricting stuff works the way people think it might. Then if this Voting Rights Act clause is struck down and states can write districts the way they should without regard to race, the Republicans might be able, through redistricting, to pick up an additional up to 17 seats. That would mean, on top of the majority that you have now, Republicans would hold about a 26, 27 seat advantage in Congress, in the House. You put that with the presidency, and Democrats would be wiped out. That's what it means. And that's why they're fighting this stuff tooth and nail. Now, Carlos, before the other break, you said to me that you think the priorities should be what right now? Not all this stuff. What is more important to you?
I thought the priority should be having the city safe, because if people were afraid to, walk on the street and everything, that shouldn't be a fear that you should have on a day-to-day basis.
So the safety of this city should come before
the
all
safety
this
of the
stuff.
cities and the people, instead of looking into making the cities bigger, so your interests will align, better later on.
Let me say to you, that's exactly what this fight is all about, though, Carlos. The cities are unsafe because the same political parties. You're in New York, Carlos. You are in New York. The Democrats have run New York effectively for almost 2 centuries. You look at Chicago. Since Mayor Daley, the Democrats have run Chicago. You look at these other blue cities where they are protected by, you can't redistrict, you can't do anything because you have these minority populations. Look at Memphis. Look at Dallas. Look at Houston. Look at L.A. Look at Philadelphia. Look at Trenton, New Jersey. Look at Camden, New Jersey. Look at Patterson, New Jersey. Look at Kansas City. Look at everywhere Democrats populate. They have used this Voting Rights Act to make sure nobody can touch them. And what is happening now is all that is being now. The Democrats are still going to win. New York's a blue city. No matter what, it's still going to be blue. But Democrats have come to believe that they own majority black-owned districts. Nobody can do anything. And that's what this whole voting rights scam is. And what have they done with that power? They have made every single one of those cities where they run unsafe for people to live. You're right. The safety should come first. But it doesn't. It doesn't. And this is what is happening, and this is why this is so dangerous. Now, you give me a great opening. Play cut 12. This is a black guy who lives in one of those cities that you're talking about, that Democrats have been running because institutionally they own it because of this Voting Rights Act and other legislation. Listen to what he has to say.
It's been real quiet in Memphis, as a matter of fact. I haven't seen so many black people appreciating President Trump out of a place like that ever, to be honest. And these people are going out in the streets and they're letting their kids play in the front yards, and they're enjoying this this type of peace that they haven't had in a very long time. You see, they've had a very, very big issue with crime. And since the National Guard's come, you have parents that are saying that they haven't been able to let their kids play in front of the house like this for years. Like, they almost don't even know what that's like, you know? And so they're taking to social media because they are grateful that their children are safe and they feel safe and that they can go and they can walk up and down the street. You imagine not being able to go for a walk outside on the street because you're worried about gang violence or you're worried that you might get robbed. You imagine that? These people haven't experienced that in years. And now they're able to go out there and enjoy their neighborhoods. This hasn't happened for so long, and it's a good thing. Obviously, there's going to be one side, the opposition, who is very upset because these individuals are not slaying each other. And I hate to say that, but it's factually true. They are complaining right now because these individuals are experiencing peace.
That is profound. And that's why this is so important, Carlos. It's time to change this. The people that are suffering the most are the people that that Democrats claim to represent. And they've been suffering. Nobody's picked up their call till now. I just want to say a word or two before we get out of here today, because we got to take a break, about this story I started with yesterday, this young Republican stuff. I got a lot more to say about this. I will say I am very disappointed in J.D. Vance. I am extremely disappointed in J.D. Vance and his remarks. Oh, James, I know I'm not supposed to say that. I'm disappointed. His response to all of this was to go out and say, oh, well, you know what Jay Johnson said, what Jay Johnson down in Virginia said was worse. What Jay Johnson said in Virginia is terrible, and he needs to never run for office, and you're right. For goodness sakes, J.D. Vance, your wife is a woman of color. She happens to be Indian. And some of these vile remarks made by these people were against people like your wife, against people like me, against people that have supported this party through hell and high water, and you can't find it in yourself to denounce these cretins in the Republican Party that need to be driven out of this party forever? Just very disappointed. These people are horrific. These young Republicans we talked about yesterday, they need to be run out of this party in disgrace, and it needs to be made clear. This is never acceptable. The days of calling people, black people, monkeys and all the rest of this, let alone, I cannot believe that any Republican would ever open up his mouth, a conservative, and praise Adolf Hitler and talk about gas chambers in a way that these people, what the hell have these people been thinking? And they need to be denounced from every quarter of decent American society. I don't care what political party people belong to. I don't care what the damn outcome is on an election. This vile, ugly, freaking behavior in this country needs to stop. I don't care whether it's Republicans saying it, Democrats saying it, whoever's saying it. This kind of evil hatred in the political parties needs to stop. And you have the guts to take on everybody else take on these people. I'll take a break. And James Golden, Snerdley, fastest hour in American media continues. Don't go away.
The Rush Hour with James Golden
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Rush Hour with James Golden. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We didn't even get to the shutdown stuff. Judge temporarily blocks Trump from firing workers during the shutdown. Another one of these district judges. Democrats threaten to see Trump in court over firings. Democrats are objecting to us paying Donald Trump, arranging for the troops to be paid. out in California, what they do? They declared a state of emergency over deportations, and that has all kinds of legal implications. We'll get to that tomorrow, I hope. Robert Ward was born on this day in 1938. Passed away in 2008, but he's the guitarist for the Ohio Untouchables, who later became the Ohio Players. And you know who else has a birthday? Richard Carpenter's birthday today. American record producer, arranger, pianist, composer. Richard Carpenter, half of the Carpenters. Happy birthday, Richard Carpenter. Born in 1946. Okay, so much we didn't get to, so much I want to get to. God willing, we're here tomorrow to get to some more of it. And I am not, this whole young Republican story, I ain't done with this. These people need to be driven out of the party, and it made clear to them that people like them are never welcomed, ever. But in the meantime, we got to go. May God bless, protect each and every single one of you, your families, your loved ones. Love and gratitude, my friends, for your being here with me, allowing me to be with you. God willing, we are back tomorrow for the Thursday edition of Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. Until then, my friends, I bid you adieu. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour. You can hear Bo Snerdley's Rush Hour weekdays at 4 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
If you're looking to create, grow, and sustain your wealth, download and subscribe to the Pain Points of Wealth podcast with Bob, Ryan, and Chris Payne. It's your podcast for market insights, money tips, and real talk on the economy.
Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.